Mr. Kalbavi Prakash, sir, who is from Kalbavi Prakash Rao, Mangalore, India. Welcome to WCC, sir.
Thank you.
It's a great pleasure having you.
My pleasure.
What are the weather aspects in India, basically in Mangalore and Ratnagiri belt of Maharashtra? How is the crop for this year, and what are your predictions for 2017?
India had problem with the crop for the last 2 to 3 years for various reasons. I think mostly to weather conditions. And I think for the current year, fortunately for us so far, the weather conditions have been excellent.
Yes, sir.
The monsoons have stopped in time, and then there has been the dry spell which is required for the flowering of the cashews, and subsequent a very good winter too. And all this has gone well with the crop. So overall, after a long time, India is expecting better than the normal crop. So last year, many of our experts have put the Indian crop at around 7 lakh metric tons. And we would expect this year the crop to be, under the current situation, probably almost 10 to 15% higher. So in any case, we should not see a crop which is less than 7,50,000 tons.
As you are a notable dealer in the retail market, I just wanted to know, sir, what is the consumption of value-added products in India, and how is the growth so far?
Well, value-added products, particularly the roasted and salted, has been in the market from the beginning. But it is a small niche where most of these markets were catered by the local value adders. That is, the small traders who used to buy the cashews, and they would do the salting, and they used to sell it through the sort of an unorganized sector or the retailing that they could see. But the recent phenomena is that we have got a lot of organized trade that has come into play as far as India is concerned, the modern retail as we call them. And this has provided a good shelf space for the organized value adders to push their products to the consumers directly. And I think other than the roasted and salted, the flavored cashews, that is, different flavors, like be it pepper, be it chutney, the Indian flavors, have started moving in different markets. It's still not a very big market. I think we would see probably the consumption going up on account of this value addition. So I see definitely a good future for value-added cashews. But as of now, I would put it's a very small segment, and probably we would be seeing about 15 to 18,000 tons of cashews being sold in that niche.
Yes, sir. And also, sir, I wanted to know about these e-platforms which are coming up, and nowadays they're being very popular, sir. So what percentage of cashews are being traded in these e-platforms, for an example? Just an idea.
I'm sure you're referring to the big baskets, the Amazon and the online trades.
Yes, sir.
This quite new phenomenon. They weren't in food. They were more in the other electronic and other commodities. But as far as cashew is concerned, I think it has just come in the last 1 or 2 years. As of now, it's a very, very small volumes happen through these e-platforms. There are a lot of difficulties that these companies are facing in terms of delivering it to the consumers. But certainly, with more and more people, particularly the younger crowd now, looking at doing a lot of e-business and relying on the e-platforms, I'm sure there is a very good potential for this business to grow. As of now, I think what's being sold through these e-platforms are a very, very small quantity, maybe hardly about 1,000 tons or so. So probably we are seeing in the next few years, with other issues like the GST and all those things coming in, we would see this sales going up.
Yes, sir. So can you please explain your experience, sir, as to how is trading of ASEAN in Tanzania, and what are the challenges as a buyer you face?
East Africa, which starts in the month of September, is probably the most looked forward, because at that part of the year, there is no cashews available anywhere in the world.
Yes.
So it's East Africa which really fills in the gap till the West Africa and the Indian crop comes in the month of February, March.
Right.
So over the period of time, East African quality has improved significantly. The system of marketing it through the Cashew Nut Board of Tanzania, and with the Cashew Nut Board of Tanzania warehousing for the farmer and then auctioning it, has created a very good marketing setup which has given a good value to the farmers in Tanzania. One of the important things as far as the manufacturer or a trader is concerned, other than the quality of the nuts, which naturally is good in East Africa, is a dryness factor. The cashews need to be well dried and it has to be exported from that country. Now, many of these West African countries, the major issues that many people face in imports is the wet cargo. And East Africa has very little problem as far as this wet cargo is concerned because of the control by the Cashew Nut Board of Tanzania. Cashew Nut Board of Tanzania ensures that every cashew that comes into the warehouse is dried. And if it is not sufficiently dried, the farmer has to take it back, dry it and bring it. Now this has ensured very good quality, and that's the reason why the prices of East Africa is going up year on year. Other than it's being strategically available only at that part of the time when nothing else is available, it's also because of its quality and the dryness factor. Now on the bottlenecks, if you say what are the major problems that an importer will face on account of one of the biggest challenge is to shipping out of East Africa.
Yes,
Matwara is a port which is very congested, and only one feeder vessel can actually berth in that particular port. And invariably in the last 4 to 5 years, we have a lot of issues shipping out. The auction happens within the 3 to 4 weeks of the season commencing, but the shipment happens much slower and much later. And many a times, many of the contracts on time have been defaulted. People have not been able to keep the commitment on timely shipments from Tanzania. So I think the government in Tanzania need to look at this issue very seriously and must create a much better port facility, must create a facility where 2 or 3 vessels can berth at a time, and must be making enough facilitation to ensure that whatever quantity gets auctioned is shipped out within the next 15 days from Matwara port. Also, this particular year we saw a major issue that the nuts that were bought in Matwara were not allowed to be shipped out from Dar es Salaam. So that became a major bottleneck. For whatever reasons, government will certainly have a good reason for their decision on why they should not happen. But that created a major block that there was hardly about 100 tons of cashews that could be exported from Matwara port, while we looked at least 400 to 500 tons that needed actually to be loaded into the vessel. So this resulted in a major shipment issue from Matwara, and if this is solved, I'm sure the farmers there will benefit much more than the manufacturer.
So with these high prices of RCN, quality issues, high labor prices, do you really think processing in India is feasible, and how are the processors managing it, sir?
Well, processing in India is certainly feasible because India has its strength. There are so many, we are the pioneers as far as manufacturing is concerned. And though we are not as advanced as Vietnam in terms of its mechanization, we have other strengths to make this processing viable as far as our country specific is concerned. One of the biggest reasons, of course, is the Indian domestic consumption, which is giving the manufacturer a much better price realization compared to the export markets. So as far as pricing is concerned, it's a commodity where it is demand and supply driven. And obviously, one cannot expect a scenario where a manufacturer is able to do a cost plus profit equal to his selling price. Since it's a market-driven pricing, we will not see a parity situation throughout the season, throughout the year. And we could see a scenario where the profits may come for a few months in a year, or maybe it will prevail on the entire year, but that's purely going to be on the demand-supply side. As far as viability is concerned, India shall always remain viable in processing. Left to itself, India will be in a position to import every nut that is produced in the world, process and re-export.
Yes. What according to you is the roadmap for having sustainability in the Indian cashew sector?
Well, one of the key questions that everyone in India has in mind is what is the roadmap to ensure that our raw cashew production goes up. Unfortunately, our processing capacity has gone up from 3 lakh metric tons 2 decades ago to 17, that is 1.7 million tons. And it's growing because of the mechanization and the process of consolidation. This will definitely go beyond 2 million tons very shortly. Unfortunately, the production in India is hardly about 7 lakh tons, as I mentioned, and we need to bring in a government policy in place to ensure that every state producing cashew or the new areas, more land under cashew cultivation has to come in. I see this as a real bottleneck as far as Indian growth story is concerned, particularly in the backdrop that most of the African countries who are now providing us the nuts have plans to process at least 50% of the produce in their own country. So that being so, India must now look inwards and focus on increasing its raw cashew production.
Sir, I just wanted to ask you, how do you feel about WCC and what are your expectations for next year?
Honestly, this is my first WCC. I have missed the two as well, and I'm really thrilled to see the kind of participation from across the world. We have good buyers, sellers, and manufacturers, and everybody. Networking is absolutely fantastic. The location is wonderful, Singapore here. The way it is organized, I think I must compliment you and your entire team. The way it has been organized, excellent organizing facilities that you have provided, and I see a great future for this WCC to go on much bigger. It can go on and much bigger. I must congratulate Srivatsava in particular for the efforts that he has made and the journey he has taken to build this as a brand in terms of WCC. Excellent.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you.
It was a great pleasure having you.
Thank you.